Faudra danser avec moi. Cordonnier, c'est bête, qu'est-ce que t'as-t-on dans la tête? C'est que moi.
Welcome back, dreamers. Tonight, my guest is Eric Altman. Eric is the founder of the Pennsylvania Cryptozoology Society, the executive director of the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, and a member of the Goosebumps Paranormal Society. Adding to this, Eric is the host and organizer of the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Camping Adventure, and the former co-host of Beyond the Edge Radio. Eric has appeared in multiple documentaries and television programs, including Mounain Devils, Invasion on Chestnut Ridge, and on the Trail of Bigfoot. So without further ado, grab your blankets, turn down the lights, get comfy, and let's fade away into
Dreamland.
All right, Eric, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. So, Eric, you are a cryptozoologist, and a pretty good one from what I hear. I was on the horn with Stan Gordon last week, and got to talk to him a lot. And you're pretty involved with him, aren't you?
Yeah, I've had a relationship with Stan now for going on, I've known Stan since I've been 13. So probably a good 40, close to 40 years, 35 to 40 years I've known Stan. And he and I have been close friends for a long time. We've worked together on many, many cases. We talk on the phone about once a week. And we keep in touch regularly through email and whatnot. So, yeah, he's like a mentor to me and a very close friend. Like I said, I've known him for a long time.
Well, if you're going to get in a field like this and have a mentor, I guess that is the about top of the line for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I got really lucky meeting him. As I said, I've been at this studying strange animals, undiscovered animals, and mysterious creatures for probably, I want to say 50 or 41 years now. So I had the chance to meet Stan when I was 13. I've known him a long time. I got to meet him. Stan's been at this for almost 62 years now. And I met him at a mall in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, where he would hold annual, like a summer weekend display of UFO and Bigfoot literature, cases, photographs, evidence, footprint cast. And he's been at, like I said, for 62 years, and he's very well known in the public realm. And he would have these displays where he would put all this material information out to the public to not only inform and educate them, but in hopes of getting others who may have had a sighting or an encounter, whether it be a UFO, the paranormal, any kind of strange creatures, or anything unknown and unusual. He would seek out eyewitnesses to come forward and give him their information in their case. And I had the opportunity to meet him, as I said, at this mall where he had the display. And he kind of took me under his wing from that point. And I bugged the crap out of him, to be honest with you. I wanted to know everything I could know about Bigfoot, about anything strange and unusual, and which was really refreshing for me. Is he didn't shy me away. He didn't shoo me away and say, go away, kid, you're bothering me. He actually kind of, welcomed me in, so to speak, and we kept in touch over the years. And as I finally got into the field and started actually researching cases, talking to eyewitnesses, and going into the field and studying, he was a great mentor to bounce ideas off of, ask questions of, share information with, get his opinion on. Because, like I said, he's been at this a lot longer than I have, and it's been great. We've worked on many cases together. We've traveled all over the Eastern United States together. We've lectured at conferences together. He's had dinner at my place, and vice versa. He's like a father figure to me. So really cool guy, and I couldn't ask for a better mentor.
Yeah, man, you hit pay dirt with that one, man. I'll tell you. I had a great time talking with him, and Stan takes this work very seriously, and I appreciate that about him. And we had a great conversation, and I think I made a couple of jokes that Stan didn't think were too funny, but I do that sometimes. But it was great. I had a great time picking his brain, and how often do you get the chance to do that with somebody that you've read all their books and seen their documentaries and things like that? So I feel like I'm pretty lucky to get to be able to talk to people like him and people like you that have been around and just pick your brain for information. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, he's truly a wealth of information. He's got so many cases that I don't even know about. And like, so we've been friends for a long time, and he just has so much information that I'm sure that he can't recall everything that he has.
Yeah.
And we'll be riding in the car together or on the phone together talking or whatever. And he'll bring up a case to me that he investigated or something that he was involved with or researched or looked into. And he always shares his new stuff with me that he's getting in, and I do the same. When something happens, my phone rings or his phone rings, we're often very quickly calling the other person and saying, hey, I just got a hot lead on this, and then we'll share the details and whatnot. But he's like a father figure. He really is. I'm very blessed and very, very lucky and fortunate to call him a friend and to have him as a mentor.
Yes, sir. So you mentioned the age of 13, you got to meet him and do that. What sparked your interest in this field, this crazy field?
Well, I've been interested in monsters and strange and spooky stuff, scary stuff since I was a little kid. And around the age of 10, probably a little bit, maybe even a little bit before that, I always had a fascination with watching the B horror movies and sci-fi movies.
Yeah, they're the best.
Yeah, those sort of things like the In Search Of that was on in 76 and 77 and all those really crazy movies and stuff like that. And in 1980, around the age of 10, I found on our local cable television a movie called The Legend of Foggy Creek, which is a docudrama that was directed by and written by Charles B. Pierce. And it was about a small town in Falk, Arkansas, where the residents, when I'm saying small town, I'm talking like 800 people. And the residents in the town, for long before the documentary was ever aired, were having experiences and encounters with some kind of hair-covered creature that would harass the people in the town, pound on houses, chase people, cross the roads in front of cars, just terrorizing the town for many, many years. And when Charles heard about it, he wanted to make a movie about it. So he decided to do a docudrama. And what he did was he found actual eyewitnesses who had these experiences and filmed them for the movie, and did probably the first, and as far as I'm aware, the first like recreation or reenactment type of things that happened in Falk, Arkansas, and based it on those cases. And it was fascinating to me to see that maybe one of these movie monsters that I've fascinated about, there might actually be a real monster out there. And I began looking into the Falk monster cases, reading newspaper articles, and again, growing up in this area with having Stan in the same hometown, my hometown of Greensboro, Pennsylvania, there was always newspaper articles about UFOs or Bigfoot sightings or strange happenings going on that he was investigating. So I always had an awareness of it. But after seeing that movie and then another film that came out shortly around that time called The Creature from Black Lake, which was another Bigfoot / hair-covered creature fictional movie that came out about a little town in Texas that was harassed again by some kind of hair-covered creature. I was kind of hooked on that possibility that something was out there and something really existed. So I began educating myself as much as possible, finding any books related to the subject at our local library, at my middle school library, anything I could find on the subject. I began reading, watching anything on TV relating to Bigfoot or any kind of the Loch Ness Monster, any kind of strange animals. And I began to really just study it and learn as much as I could from the books that I was reading. And then I got to meet Stan at 13, really started following his work and keeping in touch with him through newspapers and, the events that he held, and just keeping an eye on what was going on in my area. And it was shocking to find out there were so many things going on, not even miles from my house. There were Bigfoot sightings happening. And it was really inspiring to know that there were things going on, and it was drawing me in like a bad disease, if you will. It just got a hold of me, and here I am. I'm 51 now, and I still can't shake it. It's probably going to be with me for the rest of my life. I'm probably going to be addicted to it, always wanting to know the truth and know if these things are really out there and if they really do exist. And I still investigate cases after almost 25 years of looking into the subject, field researching, and probably close to 39 years of actually getting out in the field. 41 years of actually studying and educating myself, and 39 years of, I get the numbers mixed up, 25 years of field investigating, going out and actually talking to eyewitnesses, going to studying locations, tracking down footprints, that kind of thing. So I've been in so long, the numbers just kind of all run together.
Well, there's something about that, right? Like people that have, like, same with me. I've been interested in this stuff since I was a young kid, and I think there's something magical in it, in that little bit of excitement and the mystery and everything else. It's like it keeps you young, I feel.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. It does keep you, I think, young and a little more active, because, I could be just sitting home night after work and just watching TV and hanging out with the wife and the kid and doing really nothing. But, on the weekends, I'm out in the field, I'm out in the woods, I'm out with my buddies or members of the organization I run, investigating cases, investigating historical locations, trying to collect data and evidence while we're out in the field. So I'm always on the go. I'm doing the research, or I'm lecturing at a conference or an event, or doing podcasts and radio shows and TV shows and documentaries. And I have a couple things coming up in the future I'm going to be filming again for. So it keeps
Awesome.
me really busy.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I've spent quite a bit of time I'm sure you've heard of a little town called Donegal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
I've spent quite a bit of time in and around that area.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely awesome area, man. I was talking with Stan about this. There's something different in that area, man. And I think that I can feel it when I'm there. It feels different, and I think that has something to do with all the sightings and the weird stuff that happens through there.
Well, it's not just Donegal itself. It's that whole region. Donegal sits on the western ridge of the Allegheny Mountains, and it's called the Chestnut Ridge. And I'm sure you and Stan have talked about this. The Chestnut Ridge is, like I said, the western ridge of the Allegheny Mountains. It runs from Indiana County through Westmoreland County down into Fayette, and then finally comes to a rest around Morgantown. And that whole ridge area, which has Donegal included in it, has had a long, long history of weird and unusual phenomena that ranges from UFO and strange lights in the skies being reported and seen, to strange cryptid creatures, not just Bigfoot, but all types of weird creatures and strange phenomena. Mysterious booms and sounds have been reported. Countless haunted locations. I've been working on a new presentation when I lecture about the Chestnut Ridge, and it's amazing how many haunted locations there are in the Chestnut Ridge. And Donegal itself it's a very quaint area, a very mountainous region and some of it lies at the foothills of the ridge itself. But there's a lot of strange things that go up there. It's very remote in some places. We get a lot of Bigfoot activity in that area historically, and as recent as the past couple of years, we get strange cryptid cases out of there. UFO sightings are abundant. So it is a very strange place. And I don't know what can attribute to that from that location other than we just get the reports.
Yeah, I mean that was my next question. What if you had to if we could speculate for a minute, if you had to take a guess, what would your best guess be?
Oh, I couldn't
for that area. Actually, the whole Great Lakes area, the whole region is just weird.
Yeah, the whole Great Lakes area from Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. I mean, you name it. You can come down from the Midwest into the Ohio Valley. There's so many different things that go on across the Midwest into the Northeast that's just strange. Again, UFO sightings, strange cryptid creatures, serial killers.
Yeah.
There's so many weird things about that area of the United States. And I couldn't even begin to speculate what the cause of it is. Some people guess and speculate there's ley lines that might be responsible for it. I've never looked into ley lines myself to see if they correlate with some of this activity. I'm not a big ley line guy, to be honest with you, but there are those who fall into that category that say that there's certain things going on there. I know the ridge itself has a lot of area that's been mined for coal and a lot of water sources. To be perfectly honest, Stan and I have been talking about this for a while, that we think maybe the Bigfoot phenomenon might be related to power sources or energy sources.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of sightings that take place around waterways, around gas well lines, electrical towers, and transformer stations, cell phone towers. It's amazing when we get a case. We're looking to see how close is the closest electrical transformer or power, I should say, or how close is there a water source. There's something that has to do with electricity that's involved with these cases, and that could be why there's such a high number of cases in the Chestnut Ridges, because it's a very high area with a lot of cell phone towers, a lot of electrical, a lot of coal that's been derived from the ground. There's just it's endless possibilities, and I really can't guess as to what's causing it, but that could be one thing.
Yeah, it's a whole weird area, man. Like I don't know, I don't know what happens there. I lived in Ohio most of my life. I grew up there, lived there most of my life. Moved away a couple years ago, but even in Ohio, there's so much weird stuff. I mean, I don't know how many different cryptids and weird creatures that are there, and that goes right into the Western Pennsylvania area. We have everything from Bigfoot and frogmen to upright canines and weird, dogmen, everything. It's crazy, man. We could probably speculate all day and come up with a new guess every 5 minutes if we wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. And my wife is originally from Ohio. She grew up in the Youngstown area. So, yeah, I've heard stories about Ohio, and I've done some research over in southeastern Ohio myself over the years. And it's an interesting place. A lot of weirdness in Ohio as well.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So you run the Pennsylvania Cryptozoology Society, correct?
Yeah, I run the Pennsylvania Cryptozoology Society, the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society. Those two groups I'm currently running.
All right. So tell me what other kind of cryptids you've looked into or had reports of in the area. Can you do that?
Sure. The other cryptid that seems to be very active in our area are these mysterious large birds that are sighted called Thunderbirds, or more commonly known as Thunderbirds. Those are sighted and reported throughout Southwestern up into Northwestern Pennsylvania, even North Central Pennsylvania. And we've received some cases over the years that we looked into. The Thunderbirds are difficult to really research other than getting an eyewitness report, because by the time you get to the location, unless that bird's still circling around in the sky, you're not going to see anything. So most of those we get are eyewitness reports. We document them. We share them with Stan or other researchers in the group and pass them on. I have received one case of an upright canine or a dog man. And to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of the dog man cases simply because I don't investigate them. I don't get many on them. And it just seems physically next to impossible for a canine to walk on two legs. I know they can do it for short periods of time, and I've seen them jump up and move around a little bit, but just to constantly be on two legs is a little far-fetched for me. But I'm not a scientist. I'm not a physician or a doctor, or an animal specialist, so I don't know if it's even possible or physically possible for an animal to do that. But some of the other things we have around here, up in Lake Erie, believe it or not, they have supposed sea monsters they've seen from time to time. They reported there. Raystown in southern central Pennsylvania has a cryptid known as Ray. Supposedly it's a lake monster, Raystown Ray they call it, and that's supposedly been seen and photographed, and which I'm not a big fan of that one either, because I know Raystown is a man-made lake, and there's no real source feeding into that lake itself, like an outside source as far as I know. So it may be just a large fish that people are seeing there and just misidentifying. But
yeah, we have one of those here, Lake Norman up in North Carolina.
Right.
A couple hours north, the man-made lake, yet they have Normie up there, that people see all the time.
Yeah, that baffles me. I don't know how something like that could appear in a man-made lake, but who knows? Like I said, I'm not an animal expert by any means, so anything's possible, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, nobody really knows in this field. It's kind of hard to know when you really don't have answers,
Right.
So I have a question. You know the Ape Canyon story pretty well, don't you?
I'm familiar with it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you tell my listeners about that? Because I think they'd find that absolutely interesting.
Sure. The Ape Canyon story took place in Mount St. Helens at a location that's now known as Ape Canyon. Back then, it was just a part of the mountain, and it involved a group of prospectors who spent some time up in this area, this pass area, as they called it, and they built themselves a small cabin, and they would prospect the area for gold and other precious metals. And during their prospecting days in that area, the time in that area, they had several encounters with upright hair-covered creatures, which they ended up calling the Mounain Devils. They had several sightings of these things and actually had shot at one of these Mounain Devils on more than one occasion. But this particular weekend, they were up there prospecting, and as they were returning back to the cabin from their site, they had seen a tall, hair-covered creature that was observing them, kind of spying on them from behind a tree. And they fired shots at it, and it took off and ran up a real steep ravine, and they shot at it again and disappeared from sight. And when they got back to the cabin, two of the prospectors had told the rest of the group what they had seen, and they kind of laughed about it. They said, maybe it was one of these large Indians that the locals talk about being in the area, these huge Native American Indians in the area that have been kind of like an urban legend type of thing. And they decided to call it an evening. They decided to hunker down for the night, and they shut the door. They had their dinner, and sometime during the evening, something really strange began to happen at the cabin. At first, it started with something circling the cabin, walking around the cabin, beating on the walls, trying to get through the side walls and the front door, which they had a very strong bar across the door to barricade themselves in to keep themselves protected. And as the evening progressed, these visitations became a little more violent, where these hairy-covered creatures came around the cabin and began beating on the walls, trying to break into the cabin. They were on the roof of the cabin. The miners even reported that from a ravine or a ridge above the cabin, that some of these hair-covered creatures were throwing rocks and boulders down on top of the cabin, trying to either destroy it or get into the cabin. And at one point, there was a chink, little opening section in the logs where one of these creatures reached through the opening and grabbed an axe handle and tried to pull the axe handle out. Fortunately, one of the prospectors was able to get the axe handle turned to a certain angle sideways where the creature couldn't pull it through. But as the siege went on, the miners, the prospectors, shot back at these creatures. They weren't able to see because everything was so dark up there, but they could hear them moving around and hear them yelling and screaming and carrying on, and all the beating and pounding. They would take their rifles and just shoot blindly up through the ceiling or up through the roof of the cabin or out through those little chink holes in the logs, just shooting to try to drive off these creatures. And this siege lasted all night long. And eventually, sunlight came, things quieted down, and the prospectors went outside, and sure enough, they observed large rocks surrounding the cabin, bare human footprints all around the cabin. And it was at that time they decided, we're done. We're packing up our gear and we're out of here. And they did that. They packed up their stuff, and as they were getting ready to leave, they had another sighting of one of these creatures that was standing a couple hundred yards away, and another shot was taken. And it depends on what story you read, but there's been several different versions where one story says they hit the creature and it fell into a ravine. Another story says they hit trees next to the creature and the creature ran off and disappeared. But Beck was the name of the gentleman who came forward to the newspaper, the Oregonian, and told them about this encounter. And I guess they're called game wardens or wildlife management. The wardens went up and investigated the area, and they claimed they didn't find anything and claimed that the story was a complete hoax. And if you go back and read some of the old newspaper articles from the 1920s, 1924, when this happened, there's a lot of them debunking the story, saying it was nothing more than them making the story up to keep people out of their prospecting area. However, the side note to that is they never went back to the area after that to get their equipment they left behind or to do any more prospecting. They left the cabin and the campsite abandoned. And as a matter of fact, no one after 1924 that went up there and looked at it, it kind of fell towards abandonment, disrepair, and eventually just disappeared. And just recently, there's been people looking into finding the actual location of where the cabin was in Ape Canyon. And there are some people that believe they found that location based on the foundation of where the cabin was and some old mining tools and stuff like that. But as far as I know, that's where the story ends. People trying to find this location or saying they have. But it's a fascinating story. Fred Beck was the original prospector who told the story, and he actually put out a book shortly after his experience called "I Battled the Mountain Devils of Mount St. Helens," and I believe it's still available for print. If you look for it online, you might be able to find it. But I have probably about 10 or 15 newspaper articles from that time period that talk about the case, and it's a pretty interesting experience that the guys, if it's true, the guys had up there.
That is an interesting story. It's a really good one too.
Yeah, there's a lot more detail to it and a lot more information that your listeners, if they do some research on it, can find online, and some pretty well detailed information that talks about their encounters with the creature on the way back to the cabin, shooting it, and what happened as they were leaving the area. And the newspaper articles you can look up online on different websites like newspapers.com, and you can find them and read more about it. But it's truly is a fascinating case if it did happen.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. What is the most fascinating or your favorite case that you've investigated or report that you've investigated?
Oh, that's a tough one to answer because I've investigated so many interesting cases over the years.
Well, give me a few.
Well, let's see. 2016, there was a case in central Pennsylvania that Trapper John Tice from the TV show Mountain Monsters got a hold of me and asked me to look into for him. And it took place in a little town called Urbana, Pennsylvania. And the family claimed that they were having ongoing encounters with a creature or several creatures on their property that were coming around and harassing their dog. They had a couple of cows that was harassing the cows. The father had an encounter with it. The son had a sighting of it. The mother heard it on many occasions, screaming and hollering on the property. And their house sits right at the edge of town, bordering the state game lands. So one side of the house has an open field and a driveway, a roadway that goes up to the main road, a long driveway. And the other side of the property has a very small area for a couple of cows and a creek that runs through the bottom of their property, and then forest because it abuts to the game lands up there. And they were telling Trapper about their experiences and asked somebody to come take a look. So I got a team together of about 4 or 5 people. We drove up there. And the most compelling thing to me when I investigate a case is when I talk to an eyewitness who's experienced something traumatic, it's hard to fake emotions when they begin to break down and cry, and you see the goosebumps on their arms and they're shaking and they have a hard time retelling what happened to them. To me, that's pure emotion. That's adrenaline built up again and released, and it's very traumatic for some people. And I find that very compelling. That to me says that they truly experienced something. My job is to try to determine what they experienced and if it was real, or obviously it's real to them, but if it's real, and see if I can find any evidence to support what they've experienced. And in this case, the son, we talked to the father and the mother first, and they told us all their encounters and their experiences, and they seemed pretty sincere, and I believe they believed what they experienced. But it wasn't until I actually had the chance to talk with the son, and he recounted a sighting and an experience that he had, and some potential evidence to share with us. And basically what he told us is he came home late one night out drinking with his buddies. He shouldn't have been out, and he didn't have much to drink. He had a beer or two, and he came home, and he knew he'd get in trouble. So he had a bedroom on the first level of the house that had a door right from, like a little hallway, and then right into his bedroom. And he came down the hill, the long road, and then hit the driveway, and he shut the car off and cruised down the hill in neutral with the engine turned off. And he got to the bottom of the hill, and he stopped in the driveway right behind his dad's truck. And he got out of the truck, and as he was getting out, he noticed in the high beams of his lights, not the high beams, but the low beams of his lights, he noticed something moving around a tree in the creek right to the left of their property. And he didn't see what exactly it was at first, but he saw movement, and he figured it was a bear or a very large animal. So before he got out of the truck, he stopped and he was looking, and then he saw something standing in the creek, and the creek dropped, the creek bank dropped a good 4 feet from the driveway down into this deep creek. And this thing was waist high at that ravine and another 4 feet above where the ravine ended. So it was almost 8 feet tall. And he was looking at it, and he could definitely see it wasn't a bear. It wasn't any kind of animal he was familiar with. This was a big, hairy creature he was looking at, and it was looking back at him. And he just didn't know what to do. He thought, well, I'm a good 50 to 75 feet from the front of the house. If I make a run for it, I might be able to get in the house without this thing getting me. So he turned the lights off, he quietly shut the door, and then he made a break for the house. And he ran to the house, got in the door, shut the door, and went in his bedroom, and he didn't turn any lights on. He left everything off, thinking, okay, I'm inside, maybe this thing will just go away. Well, it didn't go away. It came up onto the porch where the door is, and it began tossing furniture around. picked up, his mother was handicapped at the time, and I believe she still is, but she had one of those motorized scooters, and it picked it up and it threw it. He heard it hit the ground and thud. It picked up bench swing, one of those covered swing benches on the porch, and moved it. And it was just throwing all this stuff in the yard around, different things they had out in the driveway in the yard. And they had a weather vane in a box they had just purchased from one of the tractor supply stores in the area. And it actually, he heard this thing pick the box up and throw the box. And then it tried to come in the house. It went to the door he went into, and it tried to come in, but fortunately he locked that door so it couldn't get in. And after about 10 or 15 minutes of it just banging stuff around outside and throwing stuff around, it eventually gave up and just went away. And that really shook him up pretty bad. So that he told his dad, and that's when his dad decided it was time to get help. And we went up there and we talked to him. Like I said, he broke down retelling his story. He had tears coming down his face. He was shaking. He was pointing to the tree where he saw this thing. And then he began to show us the motorized scooter that was broken in half from being thrown. That thing had to weigh at least 200 to 300 pounds.
Oh, yeah, they're heavy.
Yeah, he showed us the swing that was moved and all that stuff. But the most compelling thing that he showed us evidence-wise was he said, I want to show you guys the weather vane box that this thing picked up, and you tell me what it looks like. And he took us inside, and he showed us the weather vane box that was propped up against the wall inside the little hallway. And my jaw about hit the ground when I saw it. Impressed in the box was a handprint that was about 3 times the size of my hand. It just, gosh, I tried to put my hand in it, and it was just dwarfed by the size of this handprint. Something with a huge hand picked up that box, and you could see the impression it made in the cardboard. So we did an investigation that night on their property. We didn't have anything too compelling happen. I believe I had a rock thrown at me while we were on the property, but it could have been anything. It could have been an acorn coming down from a tree. I don't know, but it sounded like a rock was thrown at me. We didn't hear any really weird vocalizations. We didn't have anything really outrageous or scary to convince us stuff was going on there. We had that rock incident, and that was pretty much it. We talked to the family and told the family, hey, if there is something around here and you're experiencing it, it's not around here tonight. My advice to them was to install motion lights outside, very bright motion lights around the perimeter of the house, and that would keep anything away from the house, because these things are not known to go into bright lights. Like if you put up lights on the outside of the house, they'll stay out of the light. They want to stay hidden in the dark shadows. So we told the father and the son, put up bright lights, and that should deter anything from coming back around. And we called it quits on that night and went home. And I gave him my card and the website information and told him, if you ever have anything like this happen again, reach out to us, let us know. We'll be happy to come back up. But we never heard back from them after that investigation. That's just one of hundreds.
That's a great one.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. I never expected to see what the son showed me in that cardboard box. That blew my mind.
Yeah, I'll bet, man. I'll bet he didn't expect to see what he saw either. How terrifying would that be?
Yeah, and it wasn't far from him either. When he pulled that truck to a stop, he started getting out of it. He saw that thing moving, and then we finally saw what it was. It wasn't far away from him at all. It was probably maybe 30 yards at most from where the truck was and where the creek was. So it was pretty close to him.
He's braver than me, man. I'd have stayed in that truck and took off, went somewhere.
Yeah, he probably should have, but he decided to make a break for the house, and that's when he had the follow-up experience.
Yeah, man, that'd be terrifying, absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I can only imagine what the poor kid went through.
You mentioned the motion lights. They like to stay away from. Excuse me. They like to stay away from the bright lights and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I've also heard theories that people think that they can see like the little LEDs that night vision cameras give off. What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's been thoughts and speculation through with a lot of researchers, and that they can see the light beam that comes off of it, or the infrared beam that comes off of it that triggers it. I personally think that they can smell the petroleum in the cameras. I know bears can, and that's why bears attack cameras and pull them down and chew on them, because they can smell the petroleum in the camera. I think they can smell either the plastic, or they can smell the petroleum in it, and they avoid those cameras because I think they're smart enough that they've realized man's putting those cameras out here. If we get caught on a camera, they're going to keep coming back and invading our area, our homeland, or our home territory, and that's not going to be good for us. So I think they have personally avoid those cameras at all costs. That's why nobody's gotten a really good game camera picture.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if these things do exist, and I believe that they do, not sure I 100% believe they're a flesh and blood thing, but if they exist, they're obviously smart enough to have remained hidden and, from us for this long. And, I've heard some wild claims throughout my days, but when you really think about it, they have to have some sort of intelligence, like I had a researcher one time tell me that he was in the woods and he'd spent years and years, investigating Bigfoot, and he would bring them gifts, and, people use gifting and all that stuff. He said he was in the woods one time and he heard this Bigfoot say hello to him. And I'm like, wait a minute. You heard him say hello? And he says, yeah. I said, so not only does Bigfoot talk, but he speaks English too. And he says, yeah. And I said, all right, man, come on. He said, well, listen, I'm sure that they've been watching me just as much as I've been watching them. And they've picked up on things that I do as well as I've picked up on things that they do. He said, and I don't find that too far-fetched. And I'm like, well, I guess if you put it that way, if you've been in there with these guys for 20 some years, talking and saying hello and doing that stuff, I'm sure that they could pick that up, like they can't be dumb.
Well, I would guess it's possible. These creatures are obviously intelligent. I don't think they're on the same level of intelligence as humans, but I think they're a highly evolved, intelligent animal to remain as elusive as they have for as long as they have, and to be able to survive in the forest and do the things that people say they can do. There's obviously some kind of intelligence there. Whether or not they have a language, that remains to be seen. There's been some compelling information put out there and possible evidence put out there from several researchers over the years that have claimed to have captured languages, spoken languages.
Samurai chatter in that?
Yeah. Ron Moorhead has a couple of I guess you call them CDs, or the Volume 1, Volume 2, where he's over a course of years in the early 1970s in the Northern Sierra Mountains of California. He, along with others at a deer hunting camp, heard these weird sounds, and they can only be described as chatter, talking, hooting, grunting, all kinds of weird noises that they could never quite determine what they were. And he had a reporter come in with him and record these sounds. And they're available on the internet. You can just Google Sierra Sounds, or you can purchase them from Ron directly to read his book. He has several books on the subject. But in those recordings, there is something on those recordings that haven't been debunked. They haven't been proven as to what they are. There's some kind of language that's being recorded that it's obviously being communicated by several of these, whatever they are, creatures, if you want to call them that seem to have conversations. Now, this is not English language where they're saying hello or saying, hey, how was your day at work, honey? Well, my day really stunk. My boss was a jerk. It's just this guttural gibberish that really makes no sense. And some people call it samurai chatter because it does sound like samurais talking in the forest. but no one's been able to really prove without a shadow of a doubt what made these sounds. And they're very compelling. I know of other researchers who've heard mumbling or chatter or what sounds like people talking in the forest, but you can't understand what they're saying. Almost like a gibberish or some kind of language, but it's either a murmur or it just, you can hear somebody talking, but you can't make out what they're saying. You know there's somebody there when there truly isn't anybody there. Especially at night. I've had that happen to me several times at night where myself and my research partners or team members would hear it, and we'd talk on the radio back and forth to say, there's somebody else here in the woods with us, but there's no flashlight. We saw nobody hike in, and we saw nobody hike out. We're hearing this chatter back and forth, and there's no reason for it. We go try to find the source of the chatter or the sound and never be able to find out where it was coming from. That's happened on multiple occasions with us, and there's no explanation for it. We don't know what it is. We don't know where it's coming from or who or what is making it. Just that we can't find the source when we try to investigate. So there's something going on. I don't know what it is. Whether or not your friend heard a Bigfoot say hello or not, I don't know.
Me either.
It's possible. That's all I can say at this point. We can't rule out anything because we don't have any answers at this point.
True. Let me ask you this, Eric. How about, I've been hearing a lot lately about mechanical sounds too accompanying Bigfoot encounters. Have you heard of that or had any reports of that?
I personally have not heard any mechanical sounds while I'm out in the forest. I have heard from other researchers over the years that they've heard either underground mechanical sounds, like something is like a machine running underground, or banging or clanging or something to that effect. It's happened in the Chestnut Ridge, which I mentioned earlier, but it's not really been associated with Bigfoot as far as I'm aware in the Chestnut Ridge. But I had other researchers tell me that they've heard strange mechanical sounds, almost sounding like it's either coming from above them and in the sky or underground, which really doesn't make sense either way.
No.
And as far as I know, there's never been a source found for it. I will say this. There's a lot of times in the forest, whether you're in a remote area or there's nearby property that you may not be aware of, sound echoes and carries a great distance in the forest, surprisingly. And I learned that over the years of just being out there and spending time in the woods and the forest. Sound can echo, and it can come from the strangest directions. So it could be somebody out there that's camping and maybe they're banging on something metal, or there's a farm close by that you're not aware of, that you're hearing a tractor running or something.
Whiskey still, anything.
Right. So you can't rule out stuff like that, but until you can find a source for it, you just don't know what it is.
It's really interesting that you say that you get a lot of those. You hear a lot of people talking about those noises in the Chestnut Ridge, because one of the things that I was looking at when I was there was these. I had so many people tell me, truck drivers and people that are on the road all the time, like I was myself, tell me about tunnels and caves that are owned by the government that you can't see, that they put a blind on it or something like that. Or I had one truck driver tell me that he saw a whole side of the mountain move up, and it was a tunnel that he drove his truck into and parked his his trailer, and drove right back out. So yeah, I found that pretty interesting, because I heard several people tell me that in the Chestnut Ridge area that there was there's a few of them. So I don't know, maybe there's something to do with that too.
Well, I know there's a very intricate cave system up there in the mountains, both in the northern and the southern end of the Chestnut Ridge. There's dozens and dozens of caves. And
That's
I know
part of the Mammoth Cave system up there, isn't it?
I believe it's like an extension of it, but I don't quote me on that, because I'm not an expert on caves, so I don't know for sure, but I believe it might be an extension on it. But I do know that there are a lot of caves up there. I have family members that have gone spelunking, and I know several people that have gone spelunking in different caves up there and exploring. So I know there are caves, many, many caves. I've never heard anyone tell me that they've found a tunnel entrance that the government's using, or been able to drive a vehicle into a tunnel, or know that there are hidden tunnels up there. I've never heard that before. So
Yeah.
that's something new. Stan may be much more familiar with that, but I have not heard of anything that effect from the ridge.
Yeah, this particular truck driver I had 3 tell me this, but the one that told me that, he does all private and he does a lot of work for the military. And it was a military ran program. He was delivering to the military, and I'm not sure which branch. I could probably dig through my notes and find out, but it was several years ago. So,
well, I have had several people tell me, and I don't know how true the story is. I've never been able to confirm it, but I have had experiences with military helicopters flying over the forest where we were researching. I've seen the black helicopters, and I've seen marked helicopters fly over. But I also know that people have told me that they've seen the military on exercises in the southern Chestnut Ridge in the Fayette County area in different locations. Whether it's our military or a foreign military, I don't know. But one person actually told me they believed it was part of a Russian-U.S. exchange doing military maneuvers. And I don't know if that's true or not. I wasn't able to confirm it, but I've had several people tell me that they either witnessed or were aware of military activity and maneuvers going on in the Chestnut Ridge.
interesting. Very interesting. So, what is the best evidence other than the cool hand in the cardboard? What is the best evidence that you have found?
Well, unfortunately, the best evidence that I've found, I'll call it anecdotal evidence because it doesn't really prove anything other than something left that or something created that. And there's a variety. There's the footprints that we've discovered over the years, the large tracks that are human shaped, have anywhere from 3 to 5 digits on them, toes on them, and they range in size from, we found 11.5-inch prints to 19-inch prints up there. On either at a sighting location or a track discovery location. I found many, many tracks over the years of different sizes, different width, in different conditions: snow, mud, creek banks, forest. Many times I found footprints up there. We've also captured some very strange audio of something making weird noises that doesn't sound like the common wildlife in the area. And when we've tried to either match it online through various sound databases or send that off for someone to listen to, it hasn't been able to be positively identified. And we found hair on a couple of different occasions on the northern tier of the Chestnut Ridge, getting up into Clearfield County. That's probably about 30 miles, 40 miles north of the northern end of the Chestnut Ridge. But those hair samples, as far as I'm aware, weren't able to be identified. And we didn't have the money to do the DNA testing, unfortunately, because that at that time was really expensive. And I think one of the samples that we gave to Dr. Jeff Meldrum to look at, I think he said they were either plant fibers or bear. I can't remember which, but I would have to say, an eyewitness testimony, that's probably one of the most interesting pieces of evidence, too, that we've come across. I know a lot of people aren't big on eyewitness testimony because it can be flawed. People can misidentify things. People can be in a state of emotion, panic, or fear that things can be embellished, things can be misidentified, or your senses can misidentify something. But I still find the eyewitness testimony to be the most compelling for me, because especially when someone has a very close encounter and they can give me details that really describe something that's not in the zoological catalog. I know they're not making it up, and that to me is the most compelling piece of evidence, I think.
Yeah, I know a lot of the researchers I talked to, we talk about how you almost have to be, when you're investigating this stuff, you almost have to be, or talking to a witness, you almost have to be a psychologist in a way and be able to use your psychology to determine whether or not, you feel that they're, I guess that isn't the right way to put it, but whether, use your senses and your psychology to make a decision on whether you think this person's pulling your leg or what. Because if you pull up and somebody's just telling you this big story and they're joking around about it and this and that, chances are, maybe they're making it up. Maybe they're not. Maybe that's just their personality. But that's where you got to use that little bit of psychology, I think, to try to get to the bottom of what they saw.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I've had cases where people have told me they've seen something and it's clearly they didn't see what they claim they saw, or they misidentified it. And I've had others where I walk away from that case saying, yeah, that guy saw something, or that lady saw what she believes. And it's a matter of emotional and physical responses, reactions, retelling it. When someone has a traumatic experience, it stays with them. It's not something that just goes away. And even if they have a humorous personality and that's their way of dealing with it, there's still going to be some kind of response that they're going to have when they're retelling their experience. They're going to show some kind of response to it. Maybe dealing with fear is giggling or laughing, but usually you can talk to that eyewitness, get their statements, and you'll have a feel just by talking to them and knowing if they're telling the truth or not. And then if you go back and revisit with them months later or years later, and if they recount their story and they didn't embellish it and they didn't make stuff up that wasn't in the original story, and they stick to the original story with all the details, then you know for sure they were telling the truth of what they experienced, they believe they saw or encountered.
Yeah, for sure. So I have some big questions for you. Okay. Just a couple of more.
Sure.
So you've done and been in several documentaries, is that correct?
Yeah, maybe close to a dozen now.
Awesome. I think I've seen a few of those. And are you working on another one now, you said?
Well, we haven't started filming yet, but I was approached to do another project with Small Town Monsters and Seth Breedlove. They're going to be filming I don't know how many episodes. They're talking 6, maybe more episodes about the Ridge. They did a 2-part documentary. Actually, it was a several-part documentary called On the Trail of Bigfoot, and I was included in that one. And my part of my participation in that documentary was in the Chestnut Ridge, and I took them to an area where there had been sightings, and just to show them. And it was a small, maybe 4 or 5 minute segment of that documentary. But Seth and Mark Matsky and some of the other individuals that work with Small Town Monsters have been so impressed with the Chestnut Ridge and so captivated by all the things that go on up there. They want to expand on my little segment and turn it into a project. So instead of On the Trail of Bigfoot, or On the Trail, they're calling it On the Trail, the Ridge. And they're going to be filming a 6 to 8, maybe 10 episode series on the Ridge. And I'll be participating in that. Stan will be involved in that, and a few others, Ron Murphy, Sean Forker, just to name a few. And we'll be talking about some of the things that have gone up there. And one of the documentaries that Seth actually made, and I don't know if you've seen this or not, but it's called Invasion on Chestnut Ridge.
Yep.
And Stan and I were part of that. And that was probably one of Seth's favorite documentary films. And that's another reason why he wants to continue documenting and researching and putting out information about the Ridge, because there's always so much stuff that goes on up there. And
those guys do terrific work too.
Oh,
man. Yeah. They're amazing.
Yeah, they really put up professional, top of the line documentaries. And Seth's become a good friend of mine over the years. And I've been in a couple of his documentaries, and now I'm going to be in this third, which to me is a major project that he's going to be working on. So it's an honor to be part of that. But I've been in the Mounain Devil documentary series. There's the third one's coming out soon. that Ryan Cavallini's put out. There's a couple others too that I've been involved in, and some TV shows as well over the years.
Awesome. So I like to ask my Bigfoot researchers, what do you think about Bigfoot? Do you think that it's a flesh and blood creature, or do you think it's something else? Personally, what do you think?
When I started this many, many years ago, I was solely on the flesh and blood bandwagon, if you will. And I still feel that there is a flesh and blood element to this creature. However, my train of thought has changed over the years, and that's simply based on working with Stan, working some of the cases I've worked with Stan, and talking to some of these eyewitnesses. I'm not sure really what we're dealing with. I don't want to say it's an alien or an extraterrestrial being from another planet. I don't want to say it's an interdimensional being that some people claim it is. The only thing I will say is I don't know what it is, simply because this journey that I've been on has changed so much and it's evolved over the years. It's become like a rabbit hole. Once I started down that rabbit hole, there's been twists and turns and things happen, things I've personally experienced that you never know where it's going to go or where it's going to lead. Or you're looking for an answer, you think you get coming close to the answer, and then the question changes. So I don't know what Bigfoot is. I don't think any of us really know what Bigfoot is. I think people speculate and they believe what they want to believe Bigfoot is. But I think there's more to it than what those people want to think or want to believe it is. What it is, I have no idea.
Fair enough. That's a great answer, I think. So, last couple of questions, man.
Okay.
Is PA Bigfoot Camping Adventure coming back?
Oh, you put me on the spot.
I'm sorry, man.
That's okay. That's all right. I've been asked that since the last camping adventure in 2019. Yes, it will be coming back. When, I don't know. And there's a couple factors for that. We had a very, very successful camping adventure in 2019. Gosh, we had hundreds of people attend the event, if not over 1,000 that weekend that attended. It was very successful. We had a lot of great feedback. A lot of people really loved the camping adventure. I was very pleased with it. But the two things we're running into issues right now is funding or financing for it, because it is a charity fundraiser event. We don't raise money and pocket the money. We have to pay for the event. We donate the money. We do raise a profit to give to local charities in the area. And funding is a big factor right now, bringing the event back. And with COVID going on the last couple of years, it's really a risky time to put an event like this on because people are so skittish about attending. And I've been to many conferences and events in the last year and a half where I've seen attendance just bare minimum. You'd see vendors and maybe the guest speakers and maybe a dozen, 25, 50 people. And we can't take that kind of a hit, especially when we don't have the financing to begin with. So
right,
it's a matter of,
hey, man, move it on down south here. We don't give a shit about COVID down here. I'm telling you what, man, we care about sunshine and that's it, man. We haven't missed a beat down here.
Yeah, I've friends that live in the South, and yeah, things still go on down there as planned, which is great. I'm really happy that things haven't shut down like the rest of the country has. But unfortunately, up here in Pennsylvania, a lot of people are still nervous about the whole COVID thing, and they're leery about attending events. So once this finally all clears up and goes away, hopefully we'll get things back online. I'm shooting for right now, and I haven't made this announcement yet, I'm shooting for 2023, providing we can get the funding and providing things have settled down in the world. Hopefully by that time we'll be able to try to start planning something, but hopefully we can get something out there for 2023.
Yeah, let me know, man. I'd be glad to help you promote that for sure.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, last big question, man.
Okay.
Beyond the Edge Radio, you teased me with it. I was a big fan, and then I got teased, and then I don't know what happened to it, but I'm missing a spot in my soul.
Yeah.
What's going on?
A lot of people follow the show. I did BT Radio we founded it in 2007. Me and Sean Forker. We ran the show, and Sean was he is co-founder, and he was a host and a co-host and a color commentator. And I've had several co-hosts over the years, and I ended up with Maurice Samuels for the last 3 years of the show. After about 12 years of the show, I decided, I've got to try to dedicate more time to the family, because as you know, with doing a podcast, it takes up a lot of time. And
yes, sir.
With the production was all me. So I was not only editing, I was putting in commercials, I was putting in everything that involves booking, scheduling, the whole 9 yards. I will let your listeners know that Marie does have a wonderful show that she does on a monthly basis called Macabre Moments. And her and I are back together for that show. And I come on
awesome.
as a co-host, and we talk about everything strange and unusual that's going on out there. So it's kind of reminiscent of Beyond the Edge Radio. And it's a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing it with Marie. She's wonderful. She's a great host, and we have some pretty interesting guests on. When it's coming back, I know right now it's on hiatus. BTE, I don't know if it'll ever come back or not. Maybe one day. Never say never, as I say.
Amen, man. Amen. Well, hey, Eric, I really appreciate you taking time and coming on and talking with me and talking to my guests or talking to my audience. I really appreciate it, man. Where can everybody find all your media, your documentaries, the programs that you've been on, and your website, and report a sighting if they need to? Where can we do all that at?
Well, they can go to my website, ericaltman.net. It's sorely in need of update with latest sightings and documentaries and all that information. It has stuff, I think, up to 2019 or 2020. And there's a lot of good information there. And they can go to PABigfoot.com for the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, the group that I've been running now for, as long as I've been in this, probably about 21, 22 years. There's a lot of cases on there that we've investigated over the years. There's photos, there's videos, a lot of great information on that website. And if people want to report a sighting or share their encounter, they can do so confidentially on the website. We can have an investigator contact them through the website. You can reach out to them. Those are my two main websites. They can get a hold of me there. And I'm also on Facebook. You can find my public page. Just look up Eric H. Altman and you'll find me on Facebook as well. So
yeah, and you respond pretty quick on there too. So
yeah, I try to. I try to get back to everybody as quick as I can. Sometimes it's hard. I've got several different groups on Facebook that I run, and just trying to keep track of everything is crazy. Especially still trying to do the Bigfoot research, and that's another reason why I stopped doing BTs, because trying to juggle Bigfoot research, the family, work, BT radio, everything. It's got to be too much for me. So
people don't realize just the editing alone it takes to do a podcast is an incredible amount of time.
Yeah, it was taking me 3 or 4 days to do it because, of course, you have to come home from work and eat dinner, and then you sit down and spend an hour trying to go through, and you have to cut out every little noise and every little and that kind of thing,
Yep.
It takes a lot of time and effort, especially when you're trying to put out a professionally produced podcast or live radio show, as it was for many years. You got to do the best you can with it, and it takes time and a lot of effort. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm just getting up there in age now where I just don't have the time I used to have.
Yeah, I feel you, man. I feel you. Well, hey, Eric, I really appreciate you coming on, man. If I can do anything else for you, as far as promoting anything you got going on, hit me up. I'd love to talk with you again. And I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me on, Ken. It was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, sir. Well, that about does it for Dreamland tonight, dreamers. Thanks again for listening, and good night.